How would you go about creating a Tokyo-inspired neo-Neapolitan pizzeria in the home of country music, Nashville, Tennessee, with a celebrity chef? On top of that, what's the secret to crafting pizza that makes you feel better after eating it instead of worse? This is Open Your Restaurant by the Industry Standard, the podcast for entrepreneurs like you on the path towards opening your restaurant. Experience is a cruel teacher. She gives you the tests first and the lessons later. I created the Open Your Restaurant podcast so that when you are tested by the restaurant industry, you'll have heard the lessons and you'll know the answers. I'm your host, Brandon Sharp. As an executive chef, I earned 7 consecutive Michelin stars, and as an entrepreneur, I own and operate 3 high-end full-service restaurants. If you want to learn to cook, come and work in one of my kitchens. But if you want to learn the tactics and strategies of opening your first restaurant, stay right here. And while you're at it, hit that follow or subscribe button. Today's guest is Ben Gambill, partner and founder of SHO, that's S-H-O, SHO Pizza Bar in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm stoked to have Ben on the show, not only because he's only a couple of months into opening this new restaurant, but he brings a non-culinary background to owning a restaurant. We discuss the process of finding a restaurant space, research and development of menu items, and the specifics of putting an opening team together and dividing and conquering the myriad tasks that all have to be accomplished for a successful restaurant opening. So my guest today on Open Your Restaurant with the Industry Standard is Ben Gambill. And so, Ben, would you please just tell us briefly what your companies are, what your positions are in those companies, please?
I am a co-founder and co-owner of SHO Pizza Bar. We are a pizza restaurant based in Nashville, Tennessee. We just started about a month ago. We're trying to serve the best pizza in the world from Nashville in a neo-Neapolitan style. We're partnered with my wife and I. Another of our co-owners and co-founders is Sean Brock, the well-known chef. Historically an investor, so have an investment firm that I started in 2009. So that's my background historically is on the investment side of things. I actually started with funding the investment firm with funding from Julian Robertson, who's a fellow UNC grad.
Okay.
So my career, for the most part, has been on the investment side, mainly public equity, hedge funds, and some private equity. But this restaurant company that we founded is something that my wife's involved with as well. We met in New York, lived in New York for 20 years and just moved back to Nashville 4 to 5 years ago. And her family actually has her grandfather actually ran one of the larger restaurants in South Carolina. And then through our investment firm, which is called Tiger Eye Capital, we have also invested in the space, usually with more multi-unit, restaurants.
Got it.
So this is for sure our first ground up, but we're really excited about it. We're about a month into it, and so far the reception in Nashville has been incredible. So
wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I want to go back to the origin story of this. And SHO Pizza was inspired by pizza that you ate in Japan. Japanese pizza is not the first thing that comes to mind if I were to do a free association exercise with Japanese food. So tell us about that eureka moment that you had biting into this fantastic pizza in Japan.
I grew up in Nashville. And then went to UNC in Chapel Hill. And then I moved to New York, in the investment industry, and met my wife there. And so, we, as part of living in New York, we've eaten a lot of pizza. Um, so we've had many different styles. There's in one place in particular that we used to order from probably once to twice a week, more of a Neapolitan style pizza, more traditional, called Serafina. In the reason we went to Japan to begin with is we have 4 children, and our oldest was we probably have one more spring break with her ever before she goes off to college.
Right.
And so, these last couple of years, we've been trying to kind of, have these experiences as a family. And so none of us had ever been to Japan, before. And so we chose to go to Japan. All 4 of our children were born in New York, before we moved to Nashville, 5 years ago. And, so they all love sushi. There's a sushi place that we used to go to every Friday night. We had a standing reservation at 6 p.m. And, I would walk up from my office and they would come and meet me. And
it was 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6 over the years, I take it.
Right, exactly.
The table got bigger. Yeah.
The table got bigger. And our kids all kind of grew up loving sushi. And so we spent our first 5 days in Japan. We started in Kyoto and then went to Tokyo, eating sushi. So we had had enough sushi. And so, we were in Tokyo and visiting, one of the historic temples there. We have to find something besides sushi to have today for lunch. And so pull up Google Maps and say, what's a great restaurant near here that would be kid friendly and also is well rated and, has great reviews and everything. And we found this pizza place, that was about a block from where we were standing at that point. And it was like a 4.9, which in Tokyo is kind of like New York. 4.1 is actually pretty good.
4.9 is unheard of. Yeah.
4.9 is unheard of, particularly with something with, thousands of reviews. And so, we walk into this restaurant and it's basically a 12-seat, pizza counter, and just looks like a sushi bar. That's serving pizza with 2 pizziolas behind the counter, stretching the dough, putting it into this awesome, beautiful oven. And we go in there, we're like, oh my gosh, we've just been transported into this experience, where you feel like you're part of it.
Yeah.
And so we were intrigued just from the start, just by the intimacy of the place and just how you felt like you were part of the experience with the chefs. And then we tasted the pizza and we're like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So anyway, it was just like in our minds for the next 3 days. It just stuck with us. We felt so good afterwards, and the experience was kind of a transporting experience. We came back to Nashville, and I think we got back on a Sunday. And I think on Monday or Tuesday, we called a friend of ours, and said, can you help us find a space? We think this could be a really good business.
Was this a situation where the plane ride back, you and your wife are talking about it the whole time, drawing up plans, talking about those, that sort of thing?
We're talking about it, not just on the plane ride back, but like the entire next 3 days. And so did more research around kind of the Tokyo Neapolitan tradition, which is, Tokyo. And there's a guy, the kind of godfather of the Tokyo Neapolitan tradition started, a pizzeria called Sorankin. They're mainly two people that kind of came, that have developed that tradition. One is called Sorankin and the other is called Savoy. Savoy is the one we went to. He basically, studied in Italy, but then, in Naples, but then had taken some of those traditions back to Japan, but to Tokyo, but then started kind of iterating on and making it his own. So we get back to Nashville, and we call our friend who helps find restaurants, spaces, and he says we've got to introduce you to Sean Brock. And we said, Sean, who? Sean Brock? We're like, the guy where we have like 3 of his,
his cookbooks on your shelf. Yeah.
Cookbooks. Like,
that's Sean Brock.
That's Sean Brock. Yeah. It was just, okay, interesting. And, So we had this afternoon meeting with Sean, and he had the same experience like that we had at the exact same restaurant 8 years before.
Incredible.
Which is crazy. We were probably bigger pizza fans before that experience than he was. He was kind of always thought of pizza as kind of this humble food that you can't really do that much with. And that really kind of opened his eyes to like that you can make pizza unbelievably good and like making it at the highest level. He said, hold on 1 minute. And he goes back into the kitchen and makes 3 pizzas. And we, my wife and I are like blown away. We're like, this is it. This is the first time we've ever tasted anything like this in the US, you know,
And
at least where we had been.
Had he reverse engineered the dough and the ingredients that he had tasted, or had he somehow studied with those pizzaiolos?
Yeah, he had. I mean, he's just so talented.
Mm-hmm.
He had been taking what he tasted and just been, just engineering it himself over time.
Wow.
Yeah, and he, over time too, though, he had connected with one of the main chefs at Savoy.
Okay.
When we kind of talked about kind of what style are you, we kind of consider ourselves kind of neo-Neapolitan,
right?
Because we're also kind of bringing in, Southern ingredients into the mix as well. And so, he had been, as well using ingredients from Italy, the Southeast, as well as where most of our, ingredients, come from. He kind of came up with his style of pizza. The things that we do use from the Tokyo Neapolitan style are the fermentation. And so, we ferment our dough for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Which helps you and that's what we figured out about from why we felt so good afterwards,
Got it.
Is because it's already doing the digestion for you.
Yeah.
So it's, you feel so much better because of that. So we ferment for 3 days. And then, we also, the way that you mix it as well. So we have a very, significant size mixer.
Right.
But, in how it also in that it's not just a Tokyo tradition, but it's something that Sean, and 3 people on our team too have worked with Sean, some of which for like 10 plus years.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so it's that mixing of the air bubbles and, it's, the way that we mix it too is unique.
Okay.
Where we went in Tokyo was we have our own dough room. And so you really could only do that, which Sean kind of came up with.
So within that tiny little space, you've dedicated one spot that's an additional dough room in there, huh?
Exactly. You could really only do it if you're only doing pizza, because no one else would commit, half of their restaurant to the dough.
And so is that cold fermentation in there, or is that where you're proofing the dough?
That's where we're proofing the dough.
Okay.
And so it's basically a big proofer.
Got it.
And so, but it's a glass box. So if you come to the restaurant and you're sitting at the pizza bar or at one of our tables, you're seeing in the dough room. And that dough room has its own, entire HVAC system.
Wow. Okay.
And so every morning we come in and, are constantly monitoring the temperature of that dough room,
humidity,
depending upon the humidity, all that, depending on where we want it to be for the particular time of the day. That is one of the things that, we take a huge amount of pride in just because, the dough is the foundation, the dough is what makes everything amazing, and so, and the dough is why we have so much pride in like just our marinara pizza, with just our tomato sauce on the dough.
Nice.
And that's kind of Sean constantly says like, that's the true measure of like how good your of how good your dough
Yeah,
is.
like
right?
it's not
So
it's not about what you can put
marinara.
on top of the pizza. It's about what you can take
Yeah.
away and still have it.
If the simplest thing can be amazing,
Yeah.
on the glass, we have written like where everything that we put on our pizzas, where flour or
Oh, cool.
our flour, our dough is a recipe of several mixed flours that we've come up with over that year of, we took Sean's original, we call it kind of like the OG recipe, right? And that he was the one that we tasted on, in March of 2024. And then we spent a year, we're just whiteboarding off of that, saying, can we make this better? Should we have hydration at this level? Should we ferment for, 4 days, for 2 days, for 3, so, in doing all those iterations around, should we pre-ferment taking that, what was already a really good, product, and then just iterating to make sure it was as good as we could possibly make it.
Well, as far as the hydration goes, you read about someone making ramen noodles. The alkalinity has to be a certain, at a certain point to make the great chew of ramen noodles. And I can't imagine, or I guess I would be surprised if the water from the source in Tokyo was the same as the water in Nashville. Was there a variable in terms of the water you had to account for? How did y'all work with that?
Yes, we had to. Yes, so that's why we tried, so many different, hydration levels. So a lot of our inspirations, come from different places, from obviously some from Tokyo and then some from Italy. But then, a lot of things are very unique to Nashville,
Right.
In terms of our water, our wood, the wood that we use to fire our oven, our local, all of our vegetables, come from, the state of Tennessee. One of our most popular pizzas is our mushroom pizza, and a local mushroom, farmer brings them in pretty much every day because we go through so many of them every day. It's incredibly fresh because how many mushroom pizzas people are having.
I should have eaten a bigger breakfast today.
Yes. No,
I don't like doing this one on an empty stomach. It sounds amazing.
I know. We will, we'll send you one.
I'm sure it'll be on Goldbelly before too long.
By the feeling of watching a chef make something in front of you, where they're really kind of the stars of the show. And, so, we really, we take a lot of, pride in kind of creating an environment that's, intimate, but also fun, and so, one of the things about those places is the food was amazing, but the environment was a little bit quiet, and whereas our, environment, we do want to be kind of friendly, southern, southern hospitality. Not take ourselves too seriously, and where people, where it's a really fun environment and really welcoming for, last night, I had dinner there with some friends and family, and we had everyone from a baby to 85-year-olds. So really want to be welcoming, kind of across the board, to everyone. Pizza is a great uniter,
So if we go back, I'm curious about the nuts and bolts of the opening process. So if we go back in time 15 or 14 months to that March 18th, 2024 meeting that you and Sean Brock had, y'all both say, hell yeah, let's do this. You shake hands. What are the next steps in the process? Do you already have the space? Are you rounding up other investors? Are you getting a lawyer? Are you putting together, are you signing a lease? Like, what are the next steps that you did after that meeting?
Sure. We, the next steps kind of immediately after that meeting were, talking about kind of what we envisioned from a long-term standpoint, and kind of what kind of food we wanted to serve, and obviously, focusing on pizza, but also what kind of business model we wanted to have.
Okay.
And what kind of environment we wanted to have, what kind of team we wanted to have. And so we talked a lot about people, and people that he had worked with. We talked a lot about kind of, the business and the kind of the simplicity that we wanted to create. And I think that one of the things that, that I've found, investing in restaurant companies before is that, I've always just really appreciated people that do one thing really, really well. And I think that, and so I think that's where we really, saw eye to eye, which is like, we're going to do pizza really, really well. We do have appetizers. We have great salads and things, but we're going to do pizza really well. And because we're focused on that main thing, it allows us to have a dough room and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so that conversation around the simplicity of what we were trying to do really led us to these opportunities around having a dough room in a 1,700 square foot space, where if we were serving, roasted chicken or, steaks, we could never do that. We could just never allocate that much space to this product. And so, that's one thing. And then, I think really got on the same page around what we were trying, just focus, I think, on pizza. And we found that it pays dividends every day in terms of like just getting incrementally better, because it's why we named the restaurant SHO. It's after Shokunin, which means a master of their craft. So It's kind of like a focus on one thing over and over. And then the team, the team is really important. One of the best things about partnering with Sean is that he has these great people that he's worked with, and, it's one thing to form a team with a lot of star players that haven't worked together. And so you don't really know, how they're all going to interact. Mm-hmm. But what's amazing is, our first 3 chefs we hired, have all worked with Sean before.
Okay.
Like
so Trey Tench. Organizational DNA that's shared, or some institutional memory, huh?
Or organizational DNA, and like Trey Tench, who's our GM of and head chef as well, along with Sean, and then Woody. Trey joined within, basically as soon as we could find like a test space, Trey joined us, which was awesome.
Nice.
And so he was, we were in there in the garage, and I was the taster, but in MC, and my wife, Mary Carlisle is her name. So she goes by MC as well.
Okay.
It's been amazing to have these people with this culinary DNA too, of kind of like a fine dining background, but that want to focus on pizza, which is amazing. A lot of it starts there with the whole senior team getting along, really well. And so it's just creating we run it to really also, I think one of the things that came out of, going to that, 12-seat pizza restaurant in Tokyo is just the focus on the chefs. They really didn't have, we have great servers and a great front of the house as well. But, that restaurant there just had, the chefs were everything, they were the cashier and the server and the chef, so they were doing everything. And so I think we have integrated that part of them feeling part of the restaurant, instead of being behind some wall, and also the guests feeling like they're part of, the experience too, of the culinary experience. And so, a lot of times, the pizzas are being delivered directly by the chefs, at SHO. And so really, and they're seeing, if you're sitting at the pizza counter, you're sitting, it's almost like you're having dinner with the chef, you're sitting directly across from the chefs. And so, it's just a wonderful, kind of, bonding, experience. So, we definitely wanted to create that, as part of, from a team standpoint. Yeah. And then, I think from other, other things that we did, we're fine. The space, obviously, to our test kitchen, and then find our permanent space. And we really wanted to find a permanent space that felt as part of a neighborhood. And so, we probably saw, gosh, I don't know how many, probably online, probably 200 spaces.
Sure.
We probably went to visit probably 15 to 20, that had been hand selected from that number. And we found this just great, neighborhood in East Nashville. We also wanted it to be really close to Sean,
Okay.
so it was really easy for him to be, to be there. And also the team, a lot of our team, several of our team members walk to work,
Nice.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And, it's just this wonderful food pocket in East Nashville where, there are, I think, 8 restaurants at the corner of these 2 streets, but then those 8 restaurants are all just surrounded by homes.
Nice.
And so we get a lot of people that walk for dinner. There's a Chinese restaurant, a taco restaurant, a barbecue restaurant, and we're the only ones, doing pizza by far.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the restaurants too don't even do dinner. So several of the restaurants right there just do breakfast and lunch. One of the streets at the intersection has about a 2-mile bike path.
Yeah, that sounds idyllic.
Yeah. And we really wanted to go to where, MC and I, and Sean and Trey and the rest of the team, want to be every day.
Well, if you don't mind switching from sort of the restaurateur, taking off your restaurateur hat and putting on a fiduciary hat for a moment, one of the questions that I get a lot from chefs and sous chefs who, want to own their own restaurant and are searching for capital and searching for investors, I recognize that there are probably a million shades of gray that I'm unaware of, but it seems to me that there is sort of there's sort of the institutional investor model where, a firm is going to invest in a collection of restaurants or a regional chain or franchises or something like that. And then there's sort of the vanity investor who may invest in a local place. And so my question is, do you think that for the up and coming restaurateurs of the future, the chefs who want their own independent freestanding spot, is it more important when they are trying to attract investors? Is it more important to tell a good story, or is it more important to provide strong numbers and a sound business plan and that sort of thing?
I think it's definitely the most important to provide, to provide a plan, but I think a story is, but you have to, it's not just a story, it's kind of a mission, that you're on, to say, okay, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's why we think we're doing it in a unique way. And here's something too that's real, that our team has the capability to do. And so I think really kind of a mission is the way that we look at it. And so I think also that, I think from an investor or a fiduciary standpoint, I think a lot about that, having, been a fiduciary for the last, for pretty much my entire career.
Right. Yeah.
Of many investors' money, but we, our team owns the restaurant, and so we don't have kind of, other institutional investors. And I think for the foreseeable future, even, as we do think we will likely grow, but we're planning on kind of, self-funding, just because, I've also seen kind of people get distracted a little bit with, having a lot of different, there are a couple of, restaurants, I've seen around, town here that have a lot of different investors.
Yeah.
It does seem a little bit distracting.
Yeah.
And, particularly for like a restaurant that's starting from, restaurant number one. And so, I think we're trying to keep it kind of everyone, rowing in the same direction, and also where it's permanent, we have one objective, and that is to create, a great experience for people. And then we do think we can grow the business, but we also, want to do it on the timeline that we think's best for the business, and so there's no preconceived notions of, okay, we're going to, do something particular with the capital here, or, for these investors or what. And then we don't have any debt, and I don't, for the foreseeable future, we won't have any debt.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want anything kind of financially to get in the way of us making the right decisions. That being said, all those things being said, we're obviously, we're seeking to have a really good business that generates good cash flow and good margins, and, that we can then, deploy to growing, from here. What are you most concerned about in terms of kind of how people rate you, or is really the current experience of people being, people loving the product and people loving the experience? But a lot of the, from a fiduciary standpoint, a lot of it too is just to keep it all very aligned. Mm-hmm. Alignment is something that my entire career, I've just been hugely focused on investing in companies with alignment, where the management teams own a lot of the company, mm-hmm. Kind of almost a founder approach to investing.
Okay.
And so that's one of the key, areas, the kind of ways that I look at investing is kind of how aligned are management teams with their own company, in terms of how much equity do they own, versus what they're taking out salary, mm-hmm. And so we're kind of trying to take a very similar approach here where like everyone's really aligned, and no one's going to do that well if the overall entity, doesn't do well. And everyone's going to do well, that's on the senior team if the overall entity does well.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, I heard an interesting interview with David Steele, who's the founder of Flower and Water Hospitality. And I don't know if you've eaten at Flower and Water or their pizzerias out in San Francisco, but they are starting to scale their pizzerias. And one of his guideposts for determining how much he will spend on a restaurant project is that he will look at the projected NOI after year one, and he'll multiply that by 3, and he'll say, well, we are not going to, let's say the NOI after 3 years is going to be $600,000. It's $200,000 a year. He will not spend more than $600,000 on his restaurant project because he wants a 3-year payback for him and all his investors. And so I was wondering if do you have any other, general guideposts like that might be helpful for people who are planning their own restaurant? Because that was one I'd never heard before. And I thought that was an interesting and very clean way of looking at, this is how much we're going to spend. If it's going to cost more than this, we're not doing the project.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, that's, our kind of break even point of whether it's a good decision or not is, 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Yes, for sure. On a cash on cash payback.
Nice.
If we can do better than that, then that's great. But yes, for sure. We're very, conscious of our financials and our margins. And, there are a lot of, I think one of the things that, kind of investing in multi-unit, restaurants has taught me is that kind of, just making sure too that your metrics are, we focus a lot on four wall margin, in terms of where our four wall margin should be.
Well, when you said you're surrounded by a lot of neighborhoods and they're walkable. Is takeout something y'all do? And if so, how did you try and factor that into revenue projections, since it's not based on the number of seats or hours or anything?
Right. Sure. So we do takeout. We do takeout. Then we do takeout occasionally, mainly like Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay.
Before 5 o'clock. We will do it. So it mainly tends to be for the neighborhood. I think thus far, takeout's probably been, 5% of our business.
Okay.
I think over time, as we, because of our 3-day fermentation period, we actually intentionally started on Monday so that we could kind of get into the groove. And we were expecting, to have about 70 people on that Monday. And I think we got 4 times. And so we've been running out of dough, because we have to project 3 days ahead.
Yeah. Well, a chef buddy of mine here in Chapel Hill, Teddy Diggs, who's a amazing chef and an artisanal pizza maker as well. We were talking about business levels, and then I asked him about Super Bowl Sunday, and he said, yeah, that was bad. But he said that the day that he got crushed beyond belief, was the day before Thanksgiving. He said for him at Takeout Pizza, that was always the busiest day of the year.
A busy day. I know. We just learned on Sunday that Mother's Day is the Super Bowl for restaurants. So.
Yeah.
That was something we definitely learned this Sunday. So.
Yeah, same here. Well, so you have a Japanese pizzeria in the capital, the capital of country music. What's on the playlist at SHO?
Oh my gosh. Our playlist is, we don't call it Japanese pizzeria, but we call it, we just call it a neo-Neapolitan pizzeria.
Okay.
But, and then hopefully over time people will just think of it as, as SHO. But, our team, as we were kind of all getting together as a team, for the few weeks before we opened, our first initial playlist was created by, our entire team. So 2 songs per person. So we have about 30 to 40 songs on our original playlist that were created by our entire team.
And everybody gets 2 votes.
Everybody gets 2 picks. So that's one of them. That one plays a good amount. We also have, it's very interesting. Actually, Sean DJs some.
Okay.
So Sean has a couple of playlists, and then he's just always iterating.
Well, last question. You spoke about the importance of the guest experience, and I could not agree with you more that that's the foundation of any good restaurant business. So, what would you, if you were a fly on the wall, what would you like to overhear a guest who has left SHO and is talking to a friend of theirs about the experience? What would you like to hear them say about it?
I'd love to hear him say like that's the best pizza we've ever had, and like the friendliest, most welcoming service.
Nice.
And that's what I'd love to hear, and where they just wanted to be there and come back. One of the fun things about has just been to see a lot of the repeat customers, and I think those 2 things, and just being really friendly and helpful. So, Southern hospitality with, great food.
Excellent. All right. Well, where can the listeners find SHO on Instagram or Facebook or online or anything? What are the handles there?
Yeah. So all, at SHO Pizza Bar, on Instagram, and, so and then our website's, shopizzabar.com. And come see us. We're 1309 McGavick Pike in Nashville, about 10 minutes from downtown Nashville. So welcome to come see us anytime, and love to show you guys our our special pizza.
Yeah, well, it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. 1 month in, best of luck. I'm sure it's going to be a smash hit. And Ben, thanks so much for being my guest on the Industry Standard today. It was great.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hey, y'all, thanks for listening. Don't forget to give us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Stay humble, stay hungry.